Nietzsche never spoke of woman to comfort her or place her on a romantic pedestal. On the contrary, his reflections are like hammer blows that expose the hidden side, the feminine shadow that many prefer to deny. The philosopher saw woman not as pure essence, but as an enigmatic force, dangerous and creator of illusions. For him, woman did not seek truth, but life. She did not desire equality, but power, albeit in a veiled, dissimulated, strategic manner. This perspective unsettles because it touches deep wounds in the relationship between the sexes. What if feminine delicacy were merely a mask? What if the search for love were nothing but a subtle power game, where seduction is the most lethal weapon? Nietzsche does not invite us to hate woman, but to see her in her totality: shadow and light, manipulation and creation, lie and vital force. In this journey, we will explore how Nietzsche unveiled the feminine in its most obscure dimension. If this dive resonates with you, subscribe to the channel and follow this reflection to the end. Nietzsche saw woman as an artist of appearance. For him, the feminine does not reveal itself in pure essence, but in constant dissimulation, in play, in mask. While man, according to the philosopher, seeks to assert himself through direct force, through clarity and exposure, woman asserts herself through the opposite, through the veil, through secrecy, through the charm of never showing herself completely. This vision at first glance may seem harsh or even offensive, but it is precisely at this point that Nietzsche touches the wound of social illusion. Everything that presents itself as transparent, innocent, or angelic may be just a strategic construction. The mask in the feminine is not falseness in the vulgar sense. It is, for Nietzsche, a vital instinct. It is the way by which woman survives, creates space, and conquers power in a world shaped by masculine brutality. Mystery is not accident, but essence. Woman does not show herself to preserve herself, and precisely because of this, she is never entirely known. What attracts, what fascinates, what keeps desire alive is this impossibility of total penetration. How many times do we not see this in daily life? A delicate word that hides a precise intention, a soft look that deep down measures and evaluates, a gesture of fragility that paradoxically disarms the other and places him in an inferior position. It is in this game of shadows that Nietzsche identifies feminine power. Man believes he is in control, but often he is trapped in the invisible web of the mask. This duplicity, far from being condemned by the philosopher, is seen as aesthetic potency. Woman, as a born artist, embodies life as a work of art. There is no naked and raw truth, only representations, ornaments, performances. Makeup, clothing, calculated silence, timely laughter, everything is language, everything is weapon, everything is performance. The feminine knows that life does not tolerate brutal truths, and therefore creates illusions that allow the game to continue. Nietzsche admired this aspect. For him, woman's strength lay precisely in not succumbing to the masculine obsession with truth. While man digs deep, seeks foundations, dismantles structures, woman preserves the surface, knowing that this is where the energy of existence is found. This difference creates tension, but also fascination. It is precisely because she does not surrender, because she does not undress completely, that woman maintains her strength before man. But here emerges the dark side. If the mask is instinct, then there is never absolute sincerity. What seems like love may be strategy. What seems like fragility may be manipulation. What seems like submission may be just the most subtle form of domination. Nietzsche does not accuse woman of falseness in the moral sense. He merely reveals that feminine nature is shaped by this art of concealing, and that this inevitably disturbs any relationship that claims to be transparent. And deep down, is this not what many men fear and desire at the same time? The idea that woman will never be totally deciphered, that there will always be an enigma that escapes, that the mask will never be removed. This ambivalence between fascination and mistrust spans centuries and remains alive. The feminine mystery is not a defect to be corrected, but a force that challenges the masculine arrogance of truth. The mask, therefore, is not a passing disguise. It is the condition of the feminine in Nietzsche. Without it, woman would cease to be what she is, seductive, unpredictable, strategist of life. It is this opacity that guarantees the continuity of the game between the sexes, a game of power, attraction, and risk. And perhaps it is precisely for this reason that Nietzsche affirmed that woman is a cat, a bird, never a logical creature. He was not speaking of inferiority, but of a way of being that escapes masculine logic and takes root in the territory of appearance. In the end, the feminine mask is a disturbing revelation. What seduces us is never what is shown, but what remains hidden. It is in the veil that strength resides, and it is in this game that life gains intensity. If in the first moment the mask reveals the feminine enigma, now we enter the heart of its most dangerous force, seduction. For Nietzsche, woman does not seek to convince with arguments or subjugate through violence. She conquers through fascination, through the invisible game that traps the other without him realizing it. Seduction is the silent battlefield where the feminine triumphs over the masculine. Seduction is not a superficial act. It is an energy that permeates gestures, silences, words chosen with precision. The Nietzschean woman knows that man desires to be deceived, that he needs illusion to continue believing in the game of life. While he seeks truths that crush him, she offers appearances that nourish him. This is why Nietzsche saw in seduction not a defect, but a power. Woman knows instinctively what man finds hard to admit, that life does not survive without lies. When we look at daily life, we perceive this with clarity. A sudden smile at the right moment disarms more than any discourse. A calculated silence generates more unrest than a direct answer. A word of praise, apparently innocent, can fix someone in a state of emotional dependence. These are subtle movements, but they shape entire behaviors. Seduction does not shout, does not impose, it envelops, traps, and when the other realizes he is already inside the web. Nietzsche, in his brutal irony, said that woman does not desire truth, but victory. Seduction is her weapon because it does not present itself as attack. It is not confrontation, it is invitation. Man enters believing he is in control, but he is the one who becomes prey. It is this inversion that Nietzsche admired and feared, the power to dominate without ever seeming to dominate. The dark side of seduction appears when we realize that there is no neutrality in this game. Desire is never innocent. Woman seduces because she wants something: power, security, recognition, surrender. The difference is that her strategy is never direct. She does not advance, she attracts. And it is this attraction that becomes irresistible. Many men, blinded by desire, believe they have conquered woman, when in fact they have only responded to the call that she herself planted. Think of love relationships, intense friendships, social games. How many times does the initiative seem masculine, but the entire plot had already been woven before, silently, by the feminine gaze? Nietzsche sees this as part of an instinctive wisdom. Woman does not need logic, does not need force. Her power lies in the invisible, but it is precisely here that the abyss opens. Seduction, when elevated to the extreme, ceases to be erotic game and transforms into trap. It can imprison, suck energy, generate dependence, and even destroy. Nietzsche understood that seduction is not only erotic, but also spiritual. Woman can seduce an idea, a cause, a religion. The fascination she awakens is not limited to the body, but reaches the soul. And when the soul is captured, there is no longer any escape. This power, however, should not be reduced to the moralistic caricature of manipulation. For Nietzsche, it is vital. Seduction maintains the movement of life. Without it, only the brutality of force or the monotony of logic would remain. The feminine brings drama, tension, risk. It does not exist to be transparent, but to create the theater where existence becomes bearable. And perhaps it is precisely for this reason that seduction provokes so much fear. Man fears losing himself, fears being led by forces he does not control. He distrusts because he intuits that he is not the one leading the dance, and at the same time, he desires exactly this loss of control. The fascination with seduction is ambivalent. Whoever resists, desires. Whoever surrenders, fears. Nietzsche, in observing this game, did not seek to condemn woman, but to reveal to man his own naivety. What he calls feminine power is not inferiority, but the capacity to act in the shadows, to obtain victory without confronting. It is a power that does not need a stage, because it is exercised in the backstage of the soul. Deep down, seduction shows that power lies not only in brute force, but in the capacity to conduct the desire of the other. Woman does not win through imposition, but through subtlety. And it is this subtlety that makes her dangerous. For while man believes he dominates, it is he who has already been dominated. And here arises the reflection that Nietzsche leaves us. To what extent is life not sustained by this web of invisible seductions? To what extent are our choices, loves and convictions not the result of looks and gestures that conducted us without our realizing? Perhaps the truth is never discovered because it does not matter. What matters is the movement, the game, the fascination. In the end, seduction is proof that life is not sustained by truth, but by desire. And desire always needs veil, mystery, shadow. In this territory, woman reigns absolute, and this is what Nietzsche dared to say. There is no life without seduction, and there is no seduction without the dark side of the feminine. Nietzsche said that innocent love does not exist. For him, love is not a pure surrender, but a form of power. And when he spoke of feminine love, the shadow intensified. According to his vision, woman loves to possess, loves to dominate, loves to take revenge. Love would not be then a gratuitous donation, but an instinctive strategy of capture. This reading shocks because it contradicts the romantic ideal that many carry. We were taught to believe that love is a bond of fusion, of equality, of transparent reciprocity. But Nietzsche deconstructs this illusion by showing that behind affection, there is always a tension of power. When woman loves, she does not limit herself to sharing her life with someone. She seeks to become indispensable, to transform the other into an extension of herself. To love is to conquer territory. The philosopher saw in the feminine an intense capacity to transform love into weapon. Sweetness, care, apparent surrender are just layers of a deeper desire, the need to possess entirely. And where there is possession, there is resentment. For when woman is not reciprocated, when she feels she does not control fully, love converts into silent hatred. It is at this point that Nietzsche speaks of feminine revenge as a dangerous force, almost inevitable. In daily life, this dynamic is visible. Think of a relationship in which woman, faced with betrayal or abandonment, does not limit herself to suffering. She plots, remains silent, but keeps the wound like gunpowder. Resentment does not explode immediately. It accumulates, grows, and then manifests in subtle forms of revenge. A word that hurts, a calculated withdrawal, a gesture that undermines the other gradually. For Nietzsche, this movement is the most refined expression of love transformed into shadow. While man, in his naivety, seeks to forget and move forward, woman carries the memory of what was done to her. Her justice is not quick, but deep. Resentment is not just memory. It is a type of underground power, an energy that waits for the right time to emerge. Feminine revenge, in this sense, is not uncontrolled explosion, but cold calculation, almost artistic. Nietzsche does not condemn this characteristic. He recognizes it as part of the vital force of the feminine. Love, in its most intense form, always brings with it the possibility of destruction. Whoever loves desires, whoever desires wants to dominate, and whoever cannot dominate suffers, and from this suffering is born resentment. The shadow of love is inseparable from the loving experience itself. This explains why Nietzsche saw a difference between masculine and feminine love. Man, according to him, loves as one who throws himself outside of himself. It is rapture, impulse, almost naive surrender. Woman loves inward. She wants to absorb, envelop, capture. Masculine love is more visible, noisier, more tragic. Feminine love is silent, strategic, underground. Therefore, when it transforms into hatred, it is more devastating. Nietzsche even suggests that, for woman, love and hatred are not opposites, but faces of the same coin. Whoever loves deeply also has the capacity to hate deeply. Whoever surrenders also charges intensely. And whoever feels betrayed transforms sweetness into poison. This is why, for him, feminine revenge is something that man should never underestimate. This vision may sound cruel, but carries uncomfortable lucidity. How many stories, literary or real, show women who, when rejected or humiliated, transform into vindictive figures, capable of destroying the other emotionally, socially, or even physically? The tragedy of love is precisely this. What elevates us can be the same force that drags us to the abyss. Nietzsche did not see in this a flaw of the feminine, but an expression of life in its rawness. To love is to risk resentment. It is to accept that intensity can turn into poison. And for him, feminine poison is always more subtle, more dangerous, because it strikes where least expected. Deep down, Nietzsche's reflection forces us to rethink love not as a romantic ideal, but as a battlefield. To love is to dispute power. It is to run the risk of being dominated or of dominating. And the feminine, with its capacity to transform love into weapon, reveals the most tragic dimension of this experience. The disturbing question that remains is, can we love without wanting to possess? Can love exist without shadow, without resentment, without desire for revenge? Nietzsche suggests to us that it cannot. Love, in its truest form, is always ambivalent. Light and darkness, surrender and capture, sweetness and poison. And perhaps it is exactly this tension that makes it so irresistible and so dangerous. Nietzsche saw woman as a paradoxical force, creator and destroyer at the same time. This duplicity is not defect or contradiction, but essential part of life. For him, woman brings in herself the capacity to generate worlds, to nurture, to make flourish, but also carries the potency to annihilate, sabotage, corrode. The feminine cannot be reduced to an angelic or demonic image. It is both simultaneously. Woman, in her creative dimension, is the one who gives form to what does not yet exist. It is not just about biological motherhood, although Nietzsche recognizes it as one of the most intense expressions of this force. To create, in the feminine, is also to inspire, seduce, mold the other with her presence. How many times do we not see men transformed, strengthened, or even ruined by the influence of a woman? She awakens energies that were sleeping, extracts the best and worst, makes new versions of the other emerge. Woman, in this sense, is ferment of life. But Nietzsche never romanticized this power. Precisely because she creates, she also destroys. The same instinct that generates can sabotage. Woman can nurture, but also consume. She can strengthen, but also weaken. This ambivalence is not a deviation, but her very essence. The feminine operates like nature. It makes be born and, in the same movement, allows to die. This is why Nietzsche saw her as the rawest reflection of life itself, which is never pure goodness, but always mixture of creation and destruction. In daily life, this ambivalence manifests in simple and at the same time intense forms. A woman can be someone's source of motivation, leading him to conquer, to surpass himself, to create grandiose works. But she can also be the presence that paralyzes him, that sucks him, that imprisons him in resentments and guilts. She both lifts and drags. Feminine power is never neutral. It always transforms, upward or downward. Nietzsche saw in this an aesthetic and tragic dimension. To create is beautiful because it opens possibilities. To destroy is necessary because it removes what is worn out, what no longer has vitality. Woman, as vital force, does not limit herself to maintaining the existing. She shakes, she stirs, she transforms. This movement may seem cruel to the eyes of those who desire stability, but it is precisely what prevents life from becoming stagnation. However, there is a dark side to this process. When woman destroys, she does not do it like the brute force of man, but as an invisible, corrosive energy. She undermines silently, wears down, poisons. And this poison, contrary to masculine violence, is almost impossible to perceive until it is too late. Feminine destruction does not need explosions. It infiltrates, occupies spaces, dissolves. Nietzsche did not see in this a moral judgment. He simply recognized that woman, as vital potency, carries with her this inevitable ambiguity. To love a woman is always to risk creation and destruction. There is no relationship in which one of the two forces is not at play, and it is precisely this uncertainty that makes the feminine fascinating and feared. This duplicity also expresses itself in the way woman deals with the dreams and projects of the other. Often she supports, encourages, even sacrifices herself so that something flourishes. But at other times, consciously or unconsciously, she undermines these same ambitions, out of fear of losing, out of desire for control, or simply by the instinct of destruction that is part of life. Creating and destroying are not moral choices. They are movements that alternate according to the intensity of desire. Nietzsche understood that this tragic dimension of the feminine was inseparable from existence. Woman, by embodying life in its fullness, shows that there is no creation without destruction, that every birth brings with it the shadow of death. This is why she is at the same time muse and threat, source of inspiration and ruin. And perhaps this is the most disturbing point. The same power that elevates us is what can bring us down. The woman who makes us create is the same one who can devour us. This tension is not resolved, it is only lived. And Nietzsche invites us to face this paradox, not with fear, but with courage. To accept that the feminine is shadow and light, creator and destroyer, is to accept the very condition of life. In the end, the Nietzschean woman is not a figure to be idolized or condemned. She is the expression of life in its most intense and contradictory form. And whoever approaches her must be prepared. Every creation she inspires may also cost a destruction. The question that remains is whether we are willing to pay this price. Because without this force, perhaps nothing grandiose would ever be born. For Nietzsche, woman's relationship with truth is one of the most provocative and disconcerting aspects of his thought. The philosopher affirmed without circumlocution that woman does not seek truth, but life. This does not mean incapacity or inferiority, but rather an instinctive wisdom. the consciousness that naked and raw truth can be unbearable, while illusion keeps existence in movement. Woman, therefore, does not desire to unveil the real, but to adorn it, transform it, make it bearable. This posture places her in direct contrast with man. The masculine in the Nietzschean vision is obsessed with transparency, with dissection, with confrontation with essence. Man digs deep, wants to dismantle, wants to undress. Woman preserves the veil, the mask, the appearance, and it is precisely this preservation that, for Nietzsche, reveals a vital force. Truth can kill, illusion keeps alive. Therefore, woman instinctively prefers beautiful lie to brutal truth. In daily life, this difference appears in apparently banal gestures. A woman who softens the truth so as not to hurt, who silences what could cause pain, who invents a detail to preserve harmony. These are small lies that do not have the intention to deceive, but to sustain the bond, to keep the game in movement. Nietzsche saw in this a practical wisdom that man, with his obsession for raw honesty, frequently ignores. But there is also a dark side to this mechanism. The feminine lie, when elevated to strategy, can become conscious manipulation. The woman who masters the art of illusion can mold reality in her favor, transform relationships into webs, conduct entire destinies with unspoken words and distorted truths. Feminine power over truth is ambiguous. It can protect and beautify, but also imprison and corrode. Nietzsche saw in this not a moral error, but an inevitable expression of life. He himself, in his philosophy, defended that there is no life without lies. Absolute truth is unbearable. We need veils, narratives, masks to bear existence. What woman does instinctively, the philosopher does consciously, creates fictions to live. This is why, in a certain sense, Nietzsche admired the feminine. Woman does not waste energy seeking what is behind appearances. She plays with appearances and wins. This aspect is also reflected in love. For man, often to love means to want to know, possess the essence, tear out all secrets. For woman, to love is to maintain the game, not to surrender entirely, to always preserve something veiled. She understands that if everything were revealed, fascination would end. Mystery, sustained by half-truth, is what keeps desire alive. Feminine love, thus, feeds on lies, but on a necessary lie, creator of intensity. Nietzsche provokes by suggesting that while man seeks truth as an end in itself, woman instrumentalizes it. She is not interested in truth for truth's sake, but for what it can generate. If truth serves life, she accepts it. If it threatens life, she disguises it. This posture, far from being weakness, reveals a deeper force, the courage not to sacrifice vitality in the name of an abstraction. The disturbing side of this reflection is to perceive to what extent we are willing to live without truths. Would we prefer a beautiful lie to a cruel truth? Nietzsche believes we would, and that it is precisely for this reason that woman, in her relationship with appearance, understands existence in a more instinctive way than man. Man seeks certainties and frequently falls into despair. Woman maintains the game and thus preserves the flow of life. However, this choice for illusion can also generate tragedies. When lies become excessive, when appearance suffocates reality, emptiness emerges. The charm that seduces can transform into prison, and the denied truth can return with violence. This is why the feminine, in its relationship with truth, always walks on the edge between creation and deception, between protection and manipulation. Nietzsche does not invite us to condemn this movement, but to accept it as part of life. Woman, by preferring the mask to the nakedness of the real, teaches us that perhaps we cannot bear the world without ornaments. And if there is something dangerous in this, there is also something profoundly vital. In the end, the feminine confronts us with a painful question: do we really want the truth? or just the lies that allow us to continue living? For Nietzsche, woman has already answered instinctively. Man, in his desperate search, still needs to learn that life is sustained more in the veil than in the unveiling. We arrive at the most tragic point of the Nietzschean vision of the feminine, its connection with eternal return. This idea, one of the most intense of Nietzsche, affirms that everything we live, each gesture, each passion, each pain, returns to repeat itself infinitely without escape. It is the terrible weight and, at the same time, the grandeur of existence, to live as if we were going to relive eternally the same instant. When we think of woman within this horizon, her dark force gains a new dimension. The game of seduction, of the mask, of love and resentment is not passing, is not accident. It repeats itself. Woman, as vital force, embodies the infinite cycle of attraction and repulsion, of creation and destruction. She is the eternal dance that never ceases, the mystery that always returns, even when we believe we have deciphered it. Nietzsche does not allow us to imagine woman as a static essence. She is movement, flow, repetition. And eternal return reveals that this game is not a chance of history, but the very destiny of life. Each generation, the same plot is reenacted. Woman fascinating, dominating, veiling truth, nourishing and corroding, inspiring and avenging. The masculine, with its search for clarity and force, always returns to the same impasse before the feminine enigma. This repetition, far from being a burden, is also a promise. For if everything returns, intensity also returns. Woman, in her ambivalence, guarantees that life never becomes tedious. Fascination never exhausts itself, because there will always be veil, there will always be secret, there will always be the risk of fall. The eternal return of the feminine is the eternal renewal of the game of existence. However, there is a deep shadow in this destiny. If woman is the eternal return of seduction and veiled power, then man will never escape from his restlessness. He will always be trapped in the cycle of fascination and fear, of surrender and suspicion. The feminine enigma is not resolved, it only returns, multiplied. Each turn, new masks, new illusions, new charms, and behind everything the same vital force that never allows itself to be captured. Nietzsche does not describe this as curse, but as challenge. Eternal return invites us to live without desiring escape. Before woman, this means accepting the game, with its risks and pleasures, without seeking a final truth. It is recognizing that the relationship with the feminine will always be a field of tension, that there will never be total transparency, but that it is precisely this opacity that gives flavor to existence. In daily life, this idea can sound cruel. How many times do we not believe that now it will be different, that finally there will be clarity, that love will be pure, that truth will come to light? Nietzsche laughs at this naivety. The cycle repeats itself. There will always be masks, there will always be shadows, there will always be the game. And nevertheless, it is in this eternal return that life finds its intensity. Woman, in this sense, is the guardian of the tragic. She embodies the constant reminder that there is no definitive purity, that there is no love without poison, that absolute truth does not fit us. Her mystery returns because life itself is mystery that does not allow itself to be resolved. The Nietzschean challenge is this: before eternal return, would you say yes? Would you accept reliving infinitely the feminine enigma with its seduction, its revenge, its creation and destruction? Or would you revolt against this destiny? Nietzsche believed that the true affirming spirit of life would be one who says yes to everything, including what is dark. To accept the eternal return of the feminine is to accept life in its totality. It is to understand that woman, in her dark side, is not a defect to be corrected, but the expression of existence itself, beautiful and cruel, creator and destroyer, enigmatic and vital. She returns because she is part of that which never exhausts itself. In the end, Nietzsche does not offer us easy answers. He merely places before us the mirror of repetition. Woman, as figure of eternal return, forces us to face the essential question: would we be capable of loving even what most hurts us if we knew it would return forever? This is the ultimate provocation. The dark side of woman is not only about the feminine, but about life as a whole. The Nietzschean woman is metaphor of the tragic, that which we desire and fear, that which creates and destroys us, that which returns eternally. We have traveled together through uncomfortable territory, where Nietzsche unveiled the feminine in its most obscure face. We saw woman as mask, seductress, resentful lover, creator and destroyer, guardian of necessary lies and embodiment of eternal return. In each of these dimensions, we discovered not only something about the feminine, but about ourselves. Our hunger for power, our dependence on illusions, our incapacity to live without shadow. Nietzsche does not ask us to condemn or glorify woman, but to accept her as vital force in all her ambiguity. The feminine dark side is also the dark side of life. Recognizing this is to mature. It is to leave behind fairy tales and dive into the intensity of the real. And now I ask you, what was the belief about love, or about the feminine, that most imprisoned you until today? If this reflection moved you, comment here from where you are watching. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and be part of this community that dares to think beyond comfort. Thank you for being with me on this philosophical journey. Together, we go deeper into darkness, and who knows, we will discover new forms of light.